Hi everybody, good morning. Welcome to class with Professor Mead, your reluctant YouTube professor. So this is my second attempt. I recorded the entire lecture without ever turning on my mic the first time. So let's try this again and see how it goes. So we're going to talk about synthesizing our articles and writing the literature review. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about putting our references together. So your reference section is very important. We're going to be doing ASA references or APA references. One is American Sociological Association or American Psychological Association. They're very similar. They're almost identical nowadays because in 2006, ASA changed some of their reference notations in order to be more similar to APA. So some of the basics, you want to always alphabetize by the author's last name. You're always going to use a hanging indent, and ASAs or references in general are always on their own page. Even if you only have one sentence in your essay or your lit review, on that last page, you still put your references or works cited on its own page. By the way, you can use as the title header references or works cited, both are correct. This is what a hanging indent looks like. It's the opposite of a paragraph indent, right? So you're going to have usually a name here hanging out, and then you have everything else indented after that, so that when you see the references as you're looking at them, you'll see that name first, right here, Conger Rand. So the author's full name, last name first, the year, the article title with all caps and in quotes. So you see here the, effects, positive, feedback, direction, all of that's capitalized. A little extra space that shouldn't be there. American Journal of Sociology, and then you have your issue number and your page numbers. So if you have multiple authors, it's pretty similar. So if in their own research, they use their middle initial and only the initial of the first name, that's the way you would write it. But normally you will see their last name, middle initial, and then full first name. So however they do it, you do it, right? But you're going to go invert the last name of the first author only. So you have McKibben, WJ, and Wilcoxon, PJ. Here is the last name, right? But you're not going to do that. You would say use, and you would use and in between. So you say McKibben, WJ, and PJ Wilcoxon. Separate it with commas unless there's only two authors. And then you use your publication year, article title, issue, pages. You do not need a DOI because you're not pulling it from an internet source when you're pulling it online from your school's library. That would be it's essentially the same thing as walking into your library and pulling the source. You're just doing it online through the library source. You only need the DOIs if you were pulling it from like a Google source, Google Academic Docs source, that kind of stuff, or if it's some other documentation that's online out on the interweb, not within the school's library. So you do not need DOIs. So here we have another example. Co Deborah L. and James D. Davidson, correct, right? 2011, and you notice this one's in quotes. That's more ASA. This is more APA. The Origins of Legacy and Admissions, a sociological explanation, with it also in quotes with caps. Review of religious research. Here is our issue, volume, pages. So just a few reminders so that you don't forget or make a mistake. It's always on its separate page with its own section header, either titled references or works cited. That's up to you. All references that are cited in your reference section must be in the literature review, and everything that's in the lit review must be in your references. If you make a mistake and you leave one out and add it to the references, but it's not quoted or cited in your Literature review, that is considered cheating and considered plagiarism. The same goes as if you cite in your paper, but you forget to put it in your references. That's also considered plagiarism and cheating. And if you were in grad school, you could actually get into very big trouble for this. So it's something you should always double check, because sometimes you might decide to take out a particular quote or paraphrase. You do always cite when you paraphrase. So if I'm paraphrasing 4 authors, I'm going to cite all of them within that same sentence. I'm not going to paraphrase one author and then paraphrase the next author and then paraphrase the next author. I'm going to paraphrase all of them together for the evidence that I'm trying to use. Don't forget to list them in alphabetical order, and don't forget your hanging indents. Of course, you can always use the Purdue OWL. This is the one I offered before. I always offer this one. It's a great resource. And the reason why I like it, not only is it correct and it's reputable, but it's easy to access. You can simply Google your question and then ASA Purdue OWL, and it'll take you directly to that web page to answer your question within their site. And so it's nice, easy, and you know you have that source all the time. You can use it throughout your academic career. So let's talk about the literature review, specifically how to write a thesis and a lit review. I'm going to teach you a highly organized format. So I'm going to give you a template, and I want you to follow that template exactly. Once you show me that you know how to do this type of organization and literature review writing, then you can have more freedom. But a lot of times people have maybe only done an annotated bibliography. And remember, an annotated bibliography is I'm going to cite, reference, and summarize one article, move to the next article, cite, reference, and summarize that article, and continue on until I'm done with all of them. That's an annotated bibliography. The more advanced version is to summarize multiple articles, 20, 30, 40 articles at a time, into one literature review. So that's why we say you would normally paraphrase 4, 5, 6 articles at a time. If you're looking at 40 articles, it's going to be very likely that 5 or 6 of them are going to make the same types of arguments or points, because it's based on factual evidence. So that is why we want to make a claim of fact with our title sentence, with our thesis, and then we want to say, all of these people, all of these other experts, they're agreeing with me. They're saying the same thing. Right? So Jones, Linnea, Thompson, and Fredrickson all agree with me that social capital is pertinent for the academic success of students today. Right? And then you explain in your own words why all of those people saying that is a good form of evidence or support for your title sentence or your thesis that you're making. So we did review this before, but just remember there are 3 main types of lit reviews. Comparing and contrasting is the one you've probably done in some form previously in your academic career. Your teachers probably asked you to compare and contrast maybe 2 topics or 2 articles or 2 books or something like that, right? Major points of importance, that's the core or the crux of the more advanced one, which is the 3 main parts corresponding in 3 main tasks of explication. So if you go back to the previous videos, you'll see a further detailed explanation of that. But the one that we're doing here today is the 3 main points of importance, because that's the core basic form of organizing a lit review. That would lead you to be able to do the more advanced one, which is the explication one. So let's talk about how to do that. So what it is it's an introduction, a body, and an analysis. The introduction is a formal summary. So aside from your thesis, once you have your thesis, plug that in. It's always the last sentence of your introduction. you would then move on, because you don't want to write an introduction, a summary introduction before you write a paper. It's much easier to write a summary after you've written your paper. So plug your thesis in and move on. Then you're going to do your body, which is, this is all of the points that you want to talk about and all of the evidence that you have to support it. And then you're going to do your analysis, which is a reiteration of your thesis. So you're going to put your thesis again, and then you're going to provide evidence that summarizes it all together. But this time your logical explanation comes from a theoretical framework or perspective, whichever one you chose, what theory you chose, meaning. And so you're going to support or make those logical connections from the theoretical perspective. What this necessitates, though, is that you have some understanding of theory. So you may have learned in Social 101 that we start with theory and we end with theory, meaning when we choose our research questions, we're often thinking about those main theories and what kind of questions emerge from those theories that we have. We do research and then we use the theory again to do the analysis. We don't do the analysis with our own biased logic. We do it with a structured, formal logic that's been supported by evidence over time, and that's a theory. I recommend using one you actually are familiar with and you know. Okay, so how to use the literature when you're doing this. So the type of information you want to get from your literature, aside from your title and journal title. So your title tells you kind of what it is. Your journal title allows you to identify if you have an economic article or an article from economics, from sociology, from psychology, from business, from education. Look at those journal titles, because those journal titles group into like-mindedness. So the more that you're pulling journals or articles from similar journals, the more related they are going to be to each other. Your abstract, of course, is how you kind of weed things out on your first view. You go through your lit review casually, quickly. It feels like there's a lot of information there, but you're really only looking for definitions and keywords, and maybe even identifying some other literature that would pertain to your particular lit review that you can pull from. And then you go to the reference section of that particular article and pull those articles to add to your pile as well. This is not where you get the basis of your information that you're trying to do when you're doing a lit review. And remember, a literature review, lit review, your research, right, of the experts, is not about answering your research question. That's what the hypothesis and experiment is for. Your literature review is about becoming an expert on the topic. It's about having an umbrella-sized knowledge over the small specific question that you want to do. So I might be interested in media, how media affects toys and children and how we perceive gender within toys through the media, right? Or maybe I'm just interested in gender identification through media. That's my whole overarching umbrella topic, but my research specifically might focus on Disney cartoons and how Disney portrays female gendered heroines, right? So you see, I don't have to find the article specifically on female gendered heroines. I can find it on media and gender in as a general source or an umbrella type of thing. Where you want to find most of your information, what's really important is the findings. So the findings are what came out in that research. And so that's where you should be paying the most attention to, taking a lot of notes, and adding that information into your literature review. Conclusions, by the way, in research are often where they're going, what they would fix, what they would change, further questions, that kind of thing. So this just kind of goes through and helps you identify, right? So we're talking about the same thing, title, abstract keywords, identifying their questions or arguments, anytime they're agreeing with each other or not, what method they have, and what sources they're using. So your pre-writing, your planning and your pre-writing. All of your work is your planning and your pre-writing. It's not about sitting down and writing a paper and being done at the end of the night. It's about all this pre-writing that we're doing. And up to this point, this is what you should have been doing. Reading, taking notes, continuing to add to your tracking sheet. So read through your literature, keep the ones that connect, dump the ones that don't, take additional notes on the research. Don't forget to print your articles, consider your approaches, identify your issues, identify your themes, very important. I love to color code my themes because then I can flip through my articles and very readily identify the particular theme that I'm looking for, and then plan my approach. And in this particular case, it's 3 main points, right? That's our approach. I'm choosing my theory or my concept, right? So here it might be structural functionalism. I do a little bit of research on it. I know what I'm looking at. I know how to define it. I have a good idea of what structural functionalism is, and I'm going to be attempting to use that theory in order to explain the data that I find or the information that I find. I'm going to collect my possible examples. So all of those pieces of information that I find in the literature, all the things I highlighted, all of the notes, I'm going to plug those into the synthesis grid, and I'm collecting all of the possible examples, and then I'm going to use that synthesis grid to identify which ones are the strongest examples. And then I'm going to use those themes as my title sentences, and I'm going to use those title sentences as my thesis. Then you want to write your thesis. You cannot write your paper without a thesis. It all has to connect to your thesis. The difference between a passing grade in a lit review and a failing grade in a lit review is connection to the thesis and a strong, well-written thesis. So this is what it looks like. This should look familiar, right? So this is our synthesis grid, right? So we put our citations here from all of the articles that we pulled. In this case, it's 4 articles. So practice your ASA citations or APA citations. You put your themes here. I would recommend writing them in complete sentences as a claim of fact, a statement, right? Or an argument, which is, I'm saying basically the same thing. A claim of fact is I'm making a statement that this is true. A equals B. And then all of the evidence that I pulled from the articles. So this evidence should correlate to this particular article, this one to this article. And so every time I find more information that supports theme 1, I add it in next to the particular article it's connected to. And then when I'm done, I should very easily visually see which themes here are going to be the ones that I want to keep. I need to keep a minimum of 2 for this particular lit review. And if they're already written in sentences, you already have your 2 parts of your thesis and your 2 topic sentences or title sentences. Make sure that they don't include and or, because if it includes and, then you have to prove both of those points together. I don't want you to do that for a first thesis. If it does include and, maybe you should separate that out into 2 themes. If it includes or, you absolutely need to separate it out into 2 themes. But here I can see theme 1 and theme 3 are the strongest pieces of evidence. So strong evidence is when you have 5 or more articles that you can paraphrase together into 1 sentence. All of this needs to be paraphrased into 1 sentence. These can be quotes directly from the article. I always recommend not putting exact quotes, because if you put it into your own words here and then you paraphrase all of them together, there is no risk of being too close to the original article in the way that you write that last paraphrase sentence. So this would all be 1 article, 1 piece of evidence. A quote is very weak evidence because you're only saying 1 person is agreeing with you in terms of your claim of fact, your theme, right? So when I say DuPont, Jones, and Linnea all said this, I'm, in one sentence, I'm saying they all said this, right? So that's the paraphrase sentence here. And then I would quote or cite all of those people and then put the period at the end. So it should be one sentence. Clicking things I shouldn't be clicking. Plug in your first theme, claim of fact. Your second theme, claim of fact. Pick your theory. Here we have structural functionalism, and then write the definition for the theory. So this may mean that if you're not familiar with the theory enough to be able to write a definition in one sentence, that you are going to have to do a little bit of research on that theory to learn a little bit about that on the side so that you can then use it. So you can then write that here. So it'll be the theory. You tell me which theory it is with the definition, colon, theme 1, semicolon, theme 2, period. It's one giant sentence. Plan, right? You have your argument and your thesis. That's all in your synthesis grids. Collect your information, again, in your synthesis grid. Organize your ideas. Identify which one is the themes you're going to use. And then try to write your paper and then rewrite your paper. So what does that look like? So this is what it's going to look like. It's 4 paragraphs long. You start with your thesis. Ignore these for the moment being. Start with your thesis. That's that one giant sentence. It's the structural, social conflict theory asserts that 2 main groups of people are essentially always in, let's try this again. Social conflict theory asserts that the haves and the have-nots are in direct conflict with each other. And then colon, theme 1, semicolon, colon, theme 1, semicolon, theme 2, period. Then the body, you would take that first theme, copy it, paste it in here. Second theme, copy it, paste it in here. Then I would go back to my synthesis grid, look at my evidence, paraphrase it into one sentence, put it here, make sure I cite it, paraphrase my second piece of evidence into one sentence, cite it, plug it in here. And then do the same thing for my second point with my evidence. Notice I skipped over the support. And then I would copy and paste, again, my entire thesis again. So copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste. Do not try to rewrite it. In the future you can, but right now I don't want you to, because most of the time when people try to reword their thesis into a new title sentence, they actually change the meaning. And so when you reword it, you cannot change the meaning, and even 1 or 2 words sometimes will completely change the meaning. So again, I have my evidence for that one. Redo my thesis here. And then this time, instead of trying to paraphrase evidence that supports just theme 1 or just theme 2, I'm trying to find evidence that supports both theme 1 and theme 2 at the same time. And I'm trying to do that at least twice. Up here, I want your words. Why do you logically think that this is a good paraphrased piece of evidence to support your claim of fact, your title sentence, right? And explain to me why. So this is not cited. This is cited. This again, tell me why this supports your claim of fact. And you just keep repeating. So it's very repetitive. Here, it's not your logic, it's the theoretical logic. So now in the analysis, we're actually applying theoretical logic, right? So you're applying theory to the information you're learning. This is the more challenging component, right? Because you have to actually understand the theory in order to apply it. It's pretty advanced. So you're going to have your evidence both twice. So this needs to have at least 4 or more articles that you're citing. This needs to have 4 or more articles. This needs to have 4 or more articles. Every single one needs to have 4 or more articles. They all need to be strong evidence. These need to be your logic and words. This needs to be from the theoretical perspective. The support is not cited because it's supposed to be you. The evidence is cited. So, and then once you're done, you want to go back and explain to me what this whole paper is about in one sentence, what the first paragraph is about, what the second paragraph about, and then this is actually the analysis paragraph. It's the title sentence, thesis again. So how do you write your thesis? You write your thesis first. Then you plug in, copy and paste your title sentences. Then you add your examples. Then you include your support. Then you write your introduction. Then you walk away and try to give it at least 24 hours. At the very least, print it out and reread it for yourself. You want to reread for parsimony, clarity, organization, and validity. Parsimony means use the least amount of words possible. The less we say, the less passive language we have, the stronger our writing is, the clearer your writing is. And make sure your organization is correct. That means that this particular thing is a plug-in-play template, right? I want you to literally plug in one sentence per bullet point, starting with this one. I want you to keep the color coding, but I want you to get rid of the bullet points. So this is going to be 1 paragraph, 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs, 4 paragraphs. The most challenging, hard work for 4 paragraphs you're probably ever going to do. Once you've completed this and stepped away for a little while, when you revisit it, you're going to have a really strong idea of how to do a strong literature review, and you're going to get good grades on literature reviews from now on. Okay, have a good day, and I hope this helped.